And welcome to Patriots 4th and 2. This is Havens and Steve Balestrieri. We are here by PatsFans.com. We are here today to talk about a ton of different issues and topics regarding the Patriots' first preseason game. So exciting to see them back on the field. We got the Matthew Judon contract situation. JuJu Smith-Schuster was just released, and we have the upcoming joint practices with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they obviously are the Week 2 preseason opponent. Before we get to any of that, as always, Steve, how you doing, man?
There's never a dull moment around here.
No.
I'm doing great. I mean, it was nice to see the Patriots playing football again as a team. Granted, it's only preseason, but, this is the time of year where you get to see those, hopefuls of making a roster, and you get to see the rookies for the first time. So I think it was all great. The game, we'll talk about that, but it was great seeing them out on the field playing football again.
I agree with that. Man, so many directions we can go here, but we are recording this right now, August 9th, at 2:08 Eastern. I have a feeling it won't be posted until Saturday, just because Russ usually does it and he's traveling. So we'll see if we can get it out today, but we just found out about 30 minutes ago that JuJu Smith-Schuster was released. I'll just say this first and foremost. I think it's been clear and obvious that his physical attributes just aren't where they used to be, and the wheels kind of fell off there. And I still don't really understand the decision to pick him over Jacoby Myers, especially when Jacoby wanted to be with the Patriots, and also he ended up going with the Raiders for about $1 million difference per year, and I just don't really know why Bill went that route. But what I would say is that it was one of the more confusing moves and transactions of Bill's career. So I guess it's a two-parter, Steve. What are your thoughts on that? And then obviously of the release.
Yeah. The whole JuJu thing. I mean, Bill saw the player he was in Pittsburgh, and he was obviously a very, very good playmaker back then.
Mm-hmm.
But his injuries took their toll. And I think you could see that last year. He was never really completely healthy last year, and he kind of struggled, and you didn't see that type of quick step separation that he was known for. And this year, I mean, we heard he was 100% healthy. He, by his own account, he just doesn't have that step anymore, and it's a shame it didn't work out. As in regards to Jacoby Myers, they signed JuJu for about the same money that Jacoby got, and in hindsight, it was a really bad move.
Oh, sorry, I was muted that whole time. That's annoying. I thought
like, I'm not hearing you.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. Hopefully Russ can edit that out. I thought that from the time that that signing was made over Jacoby, especially when Jacoby went on Radio Row with Felger and Maz in 98.5 saying like, hey, it was like $1 million difference. Like it was not, they weren't far off. They just wouldn't budge past a certain line. I think that, that signing, that move with the Devontae Parker extension, I don't blame them for signing him in the first place. Devontae, I mean, but I thought the extension was weird. I think those were some of the moves at the end that helped bury Bill a little bit. So that to me was a little weird.
Yeah, it was. But again, they were looking at the guy that was in Pittsburgh, and to be fair, in 2022 he had a pretty good year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 77 passes that he caught from Mahomes, almost 900 yards. It didn't work out that way, for a variety of reasons. Last year, he only caught 29 passes for 260 yards, which are pedestrian numbers for a guy like him. You know, as we said, his knee ailments came back to haunt him. And plus, the offensive line and the quarterback play last year was not up to par. And, that all took its toll on him. But I think he's just not the same player anymore. And it's a shame because he was, when he was healthy, I thought he was an outstanding player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they signed him to a 3-year, $25 million contract last year. 16 was guaranteed. So they're taking a $9.6 million cap hit. As you and I talked offline, about 20 minutes before we went live.
That's a lot of money.
I thought it was 7. You said 9. You were right on the money. It was 9.6. I think that it speaks volumes of where they feel like they want the team to go. Not only in the youth movement when they drafted 2 receivers this year that they feel good about, but I think they just want to steer in a different direction. And I would add to this, Steve, that we talk about some of the contract, restructures for some of the guys that have been around, but I also think they've gotten rid of a couple of guys, and it seems pretty clear that this new regime is kind of moving the ship in a different direction. They want to make sure that there's a different kind of feeling around that locker room. There are certain guys that are not going to be around that they didn't agree with. For whatever reason, whether it's physical, scheme related, whatever. And there are some guys they want to make sure everybody else knows, like, hey, like these guys are in-house and work hard and do this. So, I think that they're really doing, I think there's a lot of statements being made by Wolf and Mayo. This is a $9.6 million cap hit is not like that's not something that happens that often. Like that's a huge number. They could have not easily, they could have buried him on the depth chart and just let it ride for the year and then lose it next year. Because he's already here, so it's like, all right, just let him be here, keep him on the back of the depth chart, and then go ahead and we'll do it next year when the money would have been like $3 million or whatever it was. That's a huge thing. And Todd, we'll get to Ayuk, I promise.
Yeah, we're getting to that one.
Yeah,
but
do you want to go to it now,
or do
you want to talk about the preseason game?
Yeah, but to one more thing on JuJu,
please.
Yeah, I've heard and read a lot of people saying, well, they could have buried him on the depth chart. I get that, but they have some young guys that are flashing right now, and physically, they're a lot in they're in a lot better spot than JuJu is at this stage of his career. I mean,
well, let me interject here too. What do you need? What do you need out of your receivers that are 4th and 5th on the depth chart? Special teams ability.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that came out of last night that, we've talked about 4 receivers on the team, that are locks in terms of KB, Pop, Javon, Polk. I think KJ Osborne was, I think I came away a little bit last night being like, he's on the team. They had him on the first special teams group. He's there. He's out making plays. I have a feeling he's going to be on there, which means Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Reagor, Kayshon Boutte, who I thought had a pretty good night actually as well. I think they're fighting for one guy or one spot.
One of the things I wanted to bring up when we talked about the game was Tyquan Thornton, because he started.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they pulled all the starters out, they pulled him out.
I know. I thought that was crazy.
The
Receiver
I'm
position
looking
is
at
nuts to
this.
me right now.
If you're reading the tea leaves right now, they're kind of telling you that he's going to be on the roster. Now that
I want to
could
see.
change.
I want to see. I want to see what happens with the joint practices. Okay, and
Right.
so we'll get to we'll
But
get to that.
I just thought that one stood out to me because I was like, wow, they pulled Thornton out with the other starters. So we'll get to that.
Yeah, so let's put a pin in that one. Okay, so I know how you and I are, so let's try to get organized here. Let's go to Ayuk next. So Brandon Ayuk supposedly did not want to come to the Patriots. And the rumor was that he just didn't feel really good about the quarterback position. The other teams rumored to be involved is Pittsburgh, the Washington Commanders, and also the Cleveland Browns. Supposedly, according to Mike Reese of ESPN, the Patriots offered him the most money, around 30 to 32 annual average value. So the reason people might be confused about the other teams and where's like I know people understand where like Patriots fans understand where like the team is currently, but I think it is confusing when you hear those teams and you're like, well, why is this even a conversation? Well, the Commanders have Jaden Daniels, who they just drafted at number 2 overall, who's one of Brandon Ayuk's really close friends, and they played together at Arizona State. So, that would be cool for them to play again together. So I get that. Okay. The Browns are apparently out as well. I know how people feel about Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson looks like he's not even the same player that was here just like 2 or 3 years ago. He just looks broken almost. It's just weird. But whatever. They were in the conversation. It seems like they're out too. So it seems like it's a 2-horse race at this point for Brandon Ayuk between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Washington Commanders. Do you feel like you agree with that?
Yep. And I think
on the news.
I think I think he really wants to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So maybe that, to me, the weirdest thing about, I heard a couple people being like, well, Mike Tomlin's there. Like he wants to play for an African-American head coach, a black head coach. I'm like, okay. Well, so is Gerard Mayo. Like I've heard that too. Like maybe he
Mayo isn't remotely white, so
yeah. so it's like I don't know if it's I don't think I put it this way. Obviously it's not a money thing. Obviously it's a quarterback thing. So he clearly values Russell Wilson and Justin Fields over where Drake May and Jacoby Brissett are, which I would disagree with. I would think May's trajectory is a lot higher at this point than
but the Steelers are a better team right now.
But they're a better team right now. So maybe that's it. And look, this sounds like it's condescending and I'm taking shots at Brandon. I'm not. Business is business, and I get guys can he has a lot of leverage right now. And look, if you're in the position to make $30 million a year and have leverage, then by all means do your thing, man. I mean, I'm not taking credit away from him. I just disagree with it, but it's also a little selfish, I admit, because I do think the Patriots will be in a better position than the Steelers in the next year or two. So that's just me. What's your take on that whole situation?
Yeah, but the bottom line is that's where he wants to go.
Yeah.
And and we always talk about it being a business. It's a business for the players too. I mean, he knows he's going to get paid wherever he goes, but is getting more money from New England, where you really don't want to go. Is that more preferable than going, taking a few $1 million less and playing where you want to play?
Yep.
And he's earned the right to do that. So,
yep.
I don't have any issue with that. I don't have any issue with the Patriots. I know a lot of people were complaining. They offered him $32 million average per year. I mean, that is a great offer. You know, as Mike Reese said, the devil's in the details. How much was guaranteed? Maybe that had something to do with it. You know, honestly, I mean, like you and I talked about this numerous times, both on and off the air. We would love to see Ayuk on the Patriots. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But are they really in that position right now where they need that type of player? You know, are they one big wide receiver away from contending? No.
But I've been encouraged. Honestly, this is kind of an unrelated. Maybe it's related. I don't know. It's just a kind of a different take. I have been a little bit encouraged the fact that they went after Calvin Ridley so hard and that they went after Ayuk. You know, obviously, when there's smoke, there's fire. They were obviously in the running for Ayuk. If Ayuk didn't want to come here, then that's fine. But we've talked about how they need to get a left tackle and they need to add that cherry on top on the offense and add a little more talent to that group. And yeah, it doesn't, like, to your point, it doesn't need to be. Don't worry, Todd. It's going first round next year. I promise you. Look at Will Campbell. All right, Will Campbell. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
All right.
Todd was reading your mind.
So I would say that the receiver position doesn't need to be happening right now, but I am encouraged because Elliott Wolf comes from the Green Bay Packers, lineage. Going back to his dad, Ron, who was one of the more legendary executives in the NFL history. He's up there, Ron Wolf. Well, traditionally, the Packers don't do things like that. But it looks like, and this is a total assumption, it looks like Elliott is going to have a very similar mindset to his father in terms of draft and developing. They've mentioned that multiple times this offseason. In terms of re-signing your own guys that perform well, they've checked that box. But something that's a little different that the Packers are not usually in, like, the free agency world. The Patriots have been, and they have been looking, and it's clear what they're looking for. They want to, quote unquote, weaponize the offense. They weren't able to really do that this year, aside from drafting two receivers and an undrafted tight end who some people are high on and flashed a little last night. I would say that it's kind of a good sign, in my opinion, that Elliott Wolf looks like he's able to keep those same philosophies, but also be like, yeah, we got cap money. We're going to go after a top end receiver. And these receivers, I was on with Sarah Marshall on her Musket Fire podcast last night after the game. And we had a really long conversation. Fun time. I love her to death. She's awesome.
She is awesome.
She is
awesome.
She's just so sweet. She's great insight, and I really enjoyed talking with her. But we talked about this, and it really started like around Mike Evans and Odell Beckham, their draft year, which I think was 2014, I want to say. That class was loaded. I mean, like Brandon Cooks, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham, like it was insane. And it seems like since that year, it's been like almost every single year has been just loaded with receivers. I mean, look at this year's class. Studs, just a ton of them. And it seems like with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill moving the last couple of years, it seems like every single offseason, there's a receiver that becomes available. Is it going to be T. Higgins, for example, next? Ayuk we're talking about. So these guys are available, and the market just keeps going up and up and up. I mean, and now we're talking about signing receivers to 4-year, $125 million deals. Like, that's insane money. It's literally insane that's so different than it was a couple of years ago. To me, the hardest position to play in the NFL is quarterback. Right next to it is corner. And I've always said edge rusher and tackle. You can kind of split it however you want it. Those are the top 4 premium positions. I think the NFL and the way they've dictated contracts, the way they've laid out contracts, has kind of told you that receivers are right up there. like receiver right now, and yeah, it's sounds like you're talking about it sounds like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth with when I say that they're available and that there's so many of them and that they're also so valuable in terms of contracts. But yes, it is a little bit of a card game, but I think it's more about positioning and where the team thinks they are at that current stage and everything. And how I still think receiver is right up in that conversation right now. And we're seeing some receivers move, but we also are seeing them getting paid a ton of money.
Oh yeah, and looking back at that, because I was kind of surprised that they made such a big push for Ayuk, not doubting his talent whatsoever. Because you and I, like I mentioned, you and I both said numerous times we'd love to see him,
Right.
on the Patriots. But I was thinking, well, at this time maybe they could spend the money better elsewhere because they're not really ready to make that step yet. But then part of me was thinking, well, maybe they want to see the offense, with Drake Maye when he finally does take over. Maybe they want to see an offense with a proven top tier playmaker, right? And then you have some other younger guys and get a better feel for how your quarterback is going to handle things in the NFL because they saw what happened, last year and the year before.
Right.
So I kind of get it in that aspect, if that's what the thought process was. But by not getting him at this present time or any other, top wide receiver, it does give the younger guys a chance to play more.
Yep. Totally is. Where do we want to go next?
Let's go to the preseason game.
Why don't we take a break here, though? Well, let's take a break, and then we'll do it on the other side. So we'll be right back after this. We're just going to take a quick break for podcast purposes, and we will talk about the Patriots' win over the Carolina Panthers in the week 1 of the preseason. All right, we're back here on Patriots 4th and 2. Please, again, for those that are listening, please subscribe to us on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Steve, we spent we were talking about a lot of ancillary stuff at the beginning of the show, and there's some, there's a lot of talking points around the team. It's starting to ramp up a little bit. You can feel there's some juice coming back. There's not a lot of dead times in the NFL season, but it's starting to get more and more. We have so many directions we could go, but we're talking about the game. The guys were back on the screen last night. We kind of talked about it at the touch of the show. Like, man, it's so good to see the guys back on TV. It just because you and I have been to training camp before and spent so many days together in the sun, charting things and making notes and whatever. It sucks to not be there. So seeing the guys on the TV gave me a little extra juice. Give me your biggest. We're going to go about pros and cons of the game, but I'm going to throw a curveball at you like I traditionally do. Biggest takeaway from the game last night. It could biggest be a player performance or anything related.
Yeah, no, and I think Gerard Mayo hit the nail right on the head last night in his post-game presser, where he said the score is not important.
Yep.
But the game matters because all of these guys, you got 90 guys out there. Half of them are going to be out of a job. So when they get on the field, this matters. I mean,
oh yeah.
So these guys are playing for their, livelihoods. So while the score doesn't matter a hill of beans, the games do matter for the players. And I think that's a good place to start. The one thing I took away is, granted, I know Carolina was not a good team last year, and they didn't play a lot of their players, which you can argue the pros and cons for that until the cows come home. But, you have to judge your players on what they did while they were on the field. And to me, the defense looks really good. I mean, I know it's a preseason game and it
Yep.
was the first one, but you have to go by what you see. And I thought the defense really balled out last night.
I thought my biggest takeaway, just because it's kind of on the sleeves of what you're saying, is, and I said this to Sarah last night, and I actually was talking to Chris Price a little bit as well about this, is I thought the tackling for both teams was terrific. Like
Yeah.
for this time of year, usually you don't see that kind of tackling until midseason. Like, and they were. I mean,
Both
it was
teams, yeah.
both teams, Panthers and Patriots. I thought both teams, looked good tackling. I thought that was impressive.
Yeah, and that's a great point because, again, first preseason game, it's usually sloppy in that aspect. Now there was plenty of sloppiness on both sides in other aspects, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought both defenses were wrapping up. They were bringing guys down. And again, talking about the Patriots defense, I really liked what I saw out of the defensive line. Without Christian Barmore there, granted.
I mean, Jeremiah Farms was one of the best players on the field.
Oh my God. Yeah. Talk about a guy, who boosted his stock with the team. I mean, he was playing with his hair on fire out there
with the Christian Barmore news, with him being out for an extended period of time. And honestly, I have a pretty strong feeling. It's just an assumption, which we know how dangerous it is. I think he's going to be out for the year just because of the traveling and like the Adrian Clem situation last year with his blood clots, and there's altitude issues. So it's hard when you're playing in places like Denver, for example, like
even going in a team plane.
Exactly what I was about to say. 100%.
Oh, sorry.
No. We're on the same wavelength. So it's like, yeah. I have a hard time thinking he's going to be around this year, which is really disappointing because he's one of the better players on the team. But Farms looked like a guy last night that was like, I can see my opportunity and I'm going to take it. And he did.
He did not hurt his stock whatsoever last night.
No. That thing went up. Up.
And granted, it's a preseason game, and the other team rested a lot of their, starting personnel. So you take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, you want to see your players perform. And I thought they did, and they produced. And, I just love the way, they were getting after the quarterback all night long. They didn't do a lot of blitzing. It was just
they blitzed more than I expected them to, though. They didn't do a ton of it, but they did show a couple of things where I thought they got pretty aggressive at times.
Well, and then it's funny you mentioned that. One of the linebackers, I think it was Joe Giles Harris, he blitzed and got a sack, but he wasn't supposed to be, because when he came off, he was trying to explain himself to DeMarcus Covington. And they showed that on the telecast.
And Covington was like, what the freak are you doing right now?
Yeah, you're not supposed to be blitzing.
Although I will say for O'Shane's Zinness, I will say I thought he played pretty damn well.
Jimenez, I thought, was another guy who, when he played for the Giants, they had so many different head coaches over there. I think 3 in his 3 or 4 years he was there, so he was playing for different head coaches. And, the current guys that are there, they wanted to move in a different direction, but good for the Patriots. Because I think he's going to be a really good player.
I think he just looks like a versatile little chess piece for their system.
Yep. But he can play special teams.
Yeah, he can kind of just move around. Like it just
seems
like
get after it. And I thought he didn't hurt his stock whatsoever last night.
What are your thoughts on? I thought that the Marco Wilson start was interesting and notable. I thought Jalen Hawkins kind of showed that he's really kind of locked himself as the number 3 safety behind Peppers and Duggar. And
Yep.
I thought your boy Marcellus Dial, I thought he had a pretty good night as well. Give me your thoughts on those three guys.
Yeah, I think all three of those guys, again, it's still early.
They didn't hurt themselves, at least
They
early.
they did not hurt themselves. They looked comfortable out there. That's the thing. You watch these guys go out there, and they've only been in training camp 2 weeks, right? So it's not that much, but they've absorbed what's been preached to them at this point, and they look comfortable out there, and they were just balling out. I really liked what I
thought they
saw
all
from
had pretty
Kyle.
good nights.
Yeah, all three had good nights.
Gonzalez had a couple of really good reps. God, the kid moves so. I pray that he. I mean, obviously, I want all these guys to stay healthy, but I just want to watch him play because the way he moves, the fluidity, and how smooth his hips are and legs. It's really pretty special. I'm not sure. I'm not saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer or anything like that, but there are guys that move differently. You and I have seen it on the field. I'll never forget talking to it was Mike Deso, and he was talking about how when he saw Christian McCaffrey practice, and he's like his feet were just so much different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
You and I have talked. You and I have seen Darrelle Revis move in practice, and we know what a Hall of Fame corner looks like compared to other guys. Not that other guys aren't good. There are some guys that are plenty good, but they're not There are just guys that separate themselves because their talent is just so much bigger. And Christian Gonzalez moves like one of those guys. And I thought in the very limited action he got last night, it was good to see him back on the field because I'm really excited to see what he looks like in year 2.
Yeah, I think the defense acquitted themselves extremely well last night.
Yes,
and I think the Panthers didn't kick the field goal till there was like a minute 40 left in the game. So they played hard all night long.
Mm-hmm.
And on third down, until that last drive, I think the Panthers were 2 or 3 of 13 at one point.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the kind of thing you want to see your teams getting off the field on third downs. And I just liked everything I saw. The pass rush was there. They were good against the run, and I think they only averaged about 4 yards per pass. So
Yeah. It wasn't great. The defense was really solid. Offensively, I feel like we should talk about Joe Milton a little bit. So let's just say this. Let me start with this first. Jacoby getting the first series and his whole thing, not surprising. Drake Maye only getting one series. He looked fine, but it wasn't anything to write home about, but it was a little disappointing he only got that one series. The Zappy Milton thing I found fascinating because it goes back to one of the things that we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the pod, which was Fred Kirsch bringing up, hey, what if we have to keep Zappy here in case Brissett goes down with an injury and they're not ready to throw Maye into the fire? And I think this is a total assumption, so I'm going to say this, and I want your reaction to it as well. I'm not. I sound like I'm all over the place, but I have an idea where this is going. So I thought they were kind of babying. I almost said Mac Jones, Drake Maye a little bit. I thought they were very keeping the kid gloves on him quite a bit last night, kind of working him in. Obviously AVP's offense is run heavy. I think his first 2 plays were handoffs, and then he hit a screen pass. They do want to push the ball down the field. I know everyone thinks about Alex Van Pelt's offense as just like a run heavy run system. They do want to throw down the field. They want to throw it on the seam. They want to throw it on the sideline. They want to go ahead and do that. I think they showed that on a couple of different times last night. But in the most vanilla, game plan of all time.
Yeah. On both sides.
Before I go too far, what was your reaction to just Drake Maye getting only one series? And then what is your thought secondarily on Zap getting so many minutes as like Milton? Like it seemed like they got almost as much time as each other. Like, do you think that's a competition, or what is your thoughts on that? Because I was surprised with how much time Zappy got, but maybe I shouldn't be.
When the game started, it was raining pretty hard at that time.
Really hard. Yeah.
And I think the coaches looked at it. Look, we want to get everybody in the game, but we're still not sure where our offensive line is at, and we're going to get to that. I know very quickly.
Yep.
And with the rain, do you want to risk your rookie quarterback in, week 1 preseason? I think they're saving him more for this week's joint practice. And I think that in this week's joint practice, I think it's going to be almost all Brissett and Maye. And then in the game, it's probably going to be very similar to what we saw last night, because it's more controlled in practice and there's a much less chance of your quarterbacks getting hurt in the joint practice. Not saying it can't, but the quarterbacks are pretty much off limits in practices. So
I could kiss you on the lips right now, I swear.
But with Zappy,
I said this last night to Sarah, on her pod, because you and I have seen this story 100 times. That the coaches like the we'll get to that. We'll get to that. The coaches like the training camp practice more than the games, because there's more things they can control with less variables, and they can put themselves in situations. And coaches do like even if they don't do joint practices, like in preseason games, the coaches will call each other and be like, "Hey, what do you want to work on this week? Hey, do you mind kicking, like having your punter aim to the right of the field because we're working on a certain punt coverage for that side? Or hey, do you mind doing a weak side blitz on us because I'm really worried about our protection on that side. Like, can you test us a little bit with that?" And, vice versa. Like that actually happens 100%. And so the training camp practices, they really like the joint ones. So I was saying to Sarah last night, if they go ahead and have Zappy and Wilson getting a lot of reps, Zappy and Milton, Wilson, Zappy and Milton getting a lot of reps in practice, it's going to be Maye and Brissett in the game, or vice versa. I think it's going to be one of two ways, and I have a feeling it's going to be, like you said, Brissett and Maye getting the most reps live, because then they can go ahead and they can still have the other guys get some things. They'll have Zappy take the first half and Milton take the second, or whatever.
Yeah, in regards to Zappy, I think they're showcasing him for other teams, because I think I'm pretty sure that they're going to keep Milton. I mean, we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But again, you're talking about a guy, granted, he's playing against, when he comes in late in the third quarter, he's playing against a lot of guys that probably won't be in the league, right? In a few weeks. So,
well, I said that, again, to interject, like, I told Sarah the same thing last night. It's like, to me, I don't see how you let Milton go. He's a 6th round pick, so he was drafted. He's not undrafted. The reason he went in the 6th round is because there's a lot of inconsistency in his game, but he does have an elite trait, which is his arm, and that was on display last night. Yeah, and athleticism.
And the fact that he's huge doesn't.
I mean, he's an action figure. I mean, he is a Cam Newton like style action figure where you're like, Jesus, I wouldn't even keep my shirt on if I looked like him. But
in regards to that, I mean, so you have to take what he did last night with a grain of salt, because we saw what happened last year with Malik, right? and everyone overreacted and said, "Oh, he's quarterback one." Well, it didn't turn out that way. But
Can I also counter that though with saying that with Malik, it was like, wow, this guy's really you saw the athleticism, but it was more legs. At least he's a quarterback and he has a killer arm. I mean, you saw that dart he threw for that touchdown pass. I mean, that was awesome.
that was like a 35-yard pass on a straight line.
Mac Jones couldn't even fathom how that ball came out of his arm. Not to take a shot at him, that seems unfair. So I shouldn't do that. But
that was, I mean, again with Joe Milton, that was all very impressive. I'm not saying that he's going to be the dude or no.
But there are traits. There are traits though.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
if he can
he's
dial
athletic.
it in, I mean, there are things.
On his touchdown pass, as impressive as the throw was, what I love most about that was the quarterback smarts on that play, right?
Elaborate.
He drops back. He's looking to the right all the way, and then he kind of hitched it like a pump fake to the right and draw the safety over, and then he turns and throws a bullet to Jacoby Jackson.
Thing was a bullet.
Touchdown. To me, that was more impressive than the throw itself. Now, I wish I could throw a football like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the quarterback smarts on that play. And again, you're playing against guys that, not necessarily going to be in the league in a couple of weeks. But at the same time, you watch. And what I liked about him, one of the other things that I thought he looked better at, and it was just a small sample, granted, but when he came out of Tennessee, that he was always kind of off balance, and his footwork looked really good last night. So,
yeah,
I thought that was pretty impressive. But in regards to Zappe, I think they're just showcasing him. So other teams, if something happens in preseason, backup quarterbacks are very, very valuable in the NFL.
Yep.
We saw Brian Hoyer, who was on the, telecast last night. I mean,
honestly,
look at how long his career was.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Zappe's going to find a home. I just don't think it's going to be in New England. I think they're going to keep Joe Milton because the traits that we talked about, they were on full display last night.
Is it out of the realm of possibility that he's on the practice squad?
No.
They released him. He went through waivers last year and no one took him. So
you're talking about Zappe.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, you're talking Zappe.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That could be
Milton, because I don't think Milton would get through waivers. I think someone will pick him up just because of he was a 6th round pick. He wasn't an undrafted guy. I think what they should do is try to squeak Zappe through waivers. Hey, you're putting in some valuable time in the preseason. You're putting some good tape on film for other teams. If you land on another team, we're happy for you. If not, we'd love to have you back on the practice squad. And then he's kind of like the break glass in an emergency situation. If they feel like Maye's not ready to go and they want to go ahead and bring a guy on. Otherwise, if he gets picked up by another team, you just sign another veteran, that you feel like is in the system. There's a guy I'm blanking on. I'm hoping I'm going to remember it. Who's like a veteran backup quarterback that has played an AVP system that I think would be a good choice. But irregardless, I think that Milton is absolutely making the team as the 3rd quarterback, and Zappe is going to be on the outside looking in. And I'm not saying they're going to totally get rid of him. I just think that if I had to put myself in their shoes, I just don't see how Milton gets through waivers at a higher percentage than Zappe.
And what we saw from Zappe is what we've always known. I mean, he's not going to take that many chances. And I thought he made a couple of nice throws. That 28-yarder to Keyshawn Butte, I thought was a great throw, a great catch as well. But he is who he is at this point. I mean, he's been around for a couple of years now, and I just think you have to go with the guy who has, especially your third quarterback. At this point, we all knew Milton had a cannon, and he's extremely athletic, and he's showing he can play quarterback. I would go with Milton, and I've been saying that since the spring. When I did my first roster projection, I did that. So, but it's one preseason game.
I was really impressed with him though. Like I don't want to overreact. So we've all seen, I was I as a little backstory to the listeners. I remember my first time being hoodwinked was Jeff Demps. like really locked in, and I was like, man, this guy is a gold medal or a silver medalist as an Olympian sprinter, incredible speed. His Florida highlights were insane, and I remember seeing him on the field and being like, holy effing crap, this guy is awesome. And yeah, I don't think he even made the team. I'm pretty sure he was done before the before the season started. So it's easy at this time, Steve, to kind of talk yourself in or out of a lot of players because there's no game planning going on. It's all about situational. Like guys are playing, and they're playing hard because the guys that are on the field are playing hard because they're not only showcasing themselves for their own team, but for every other team in the league. So they want to go ahead and keep their career alive. But there's no game planning going on in terms of like a regular week 1 game or regular season game. It's not the same thing. But there are still plays being run and guys getting live reps and things like that, and it's easy to be kind of talked in or out of a certain player, at this time. Let's see. Where else do we need to go?
We need to go offensive line.
Okay, let me just make one note real quick before the offensive line. I thought Jalen Polk to me looked exactly like how I expected him to look. He ran a good route. Did he create a lot of separation? No. But his hands were like vice grips. I mean, you could see it. I mean, that guy is not dropping a ball. I thought he looked a little impressive at times. What about you?
Yep, I liked what I saw from him.
Yep.
And okay. With a couple of different passes, if they were more online, perhaps Baker would have shown up a little bit more.
The deep shot to Baker that ended up being just a totally terrible pass. Was that Zappy?
Yeah.
There was one to Baker down the left sideline that I thought that it was a good throw. Could have been really fun to watch. So that was a little disappointing. But anyway, let's get to the offensive line. Offensive line, I guess let me just hear your opening take on that.
I liked, for the most part, what I saw from the interior guys. I'm still really worried about tackle, especially left tackle.
Yep, and Shooks had a rough night.
Yeah. Let's look at this, not through rose-colored glasses or whatever, but
it's all right. We can put our
Carolina is going to struggle this year getting after the passer. They lost their best pass rusher.
Yep, but they still have one of the better interior, defensive linemen in the league in Derek Brown.
But and they rested a lot of their starters.
Right? Can you tell?
But Darian Lowe,
sorry, hold that thought, please. I thought one of the funniest parts of the entire broadcast last night was Scott Zolak saying that the Panthers are resting 32 starters, and I forget which McCourty it was, who were awesome, by the way. Both Jason and Devin were terrific.
I couldn't tell which one was talking though.
I know. You had to really. They sound so similar. I can kind of tell them apart, but you have to really look at it to see it. Yeah. I thought one of the funniest moments last night was Scott Zolak being like, "Well, the Panthers are resting 32 starters," and one of the McCourties goes, "There's not 32 starting players on a football team." And I thought it was just, I don't know, it was just such like it really didn't even get a lot of run, but it was just such like a casual, like, being like, "You idiot, there's 11 and 11. Like, there's 32 starters being rested." Like, I knew what Scott was trying to say, and obviously live TV, Jesus, how many times we've been doing the show for 13 years, and how many dumb things do we say on
he is not a play-by-play guy. I don't think he called one play last night.
No, not at all.
Yeah, he'd just wait till it was over and say, "Oh, yeah," he was doing his regular thing, So fun. The McCourty brothers were great. And even Brian Hoyer was like, one of the McCourty said something. I don't know which one of you said that, but so we weren't the only ones. But anyway, I just looked at big picture. Vidarian Lowe still scares the heck out of me because he started at left tackle, and I didn't see much out of him that is filling me full of hope. I think that position more than anything is going to be a problem because
we've said this before, and I'll say it again. The offensive line, I would be stunned, and I'm going to say this now, and we will revisit this conversation at the end of the season. I will be absolutely stunned if that offensive line for the Patriots doesn't dictate where their season goes. If their offensive line is an absolute train wreck, it's going to be a huge issue, a layered issue. Not only is it going to screw up the entire offense, it's going to screw up the defense. Everyone expecting the defense to be good. Well, if the offense can't go through a series or two, the defense is going to be gassed by the middle of the third quarter. And then you're not going to have Drake Maye in there. And you're not going to put up points. Like, you're going to be picking in the top three again if that offensive line is a total disaster. There's no question. I think it's going to be Chooks Okorafor. I think it's going to be Sidney So. I think it's be David Andrews, and then Mike Onwenu, and then Caden Walls. That's what I'm expecting. I don't know if it's going to be like that, but that's what I think is going to happen. Do you agree with that?
I do, because we saw what happened with Vidarian Lowe last year, and he struggled all season long, and then they went through numerous other players trying to find something that worked. And I did not see anything. Excuse me.
Bless you.
That fills me with hope. So, maybe, it's first preseason game. Maybe Wallace turns into that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But, the offensive line, and even in the run blocking, they blocked well at times. And I know it's all new. Everyone's trying to find their place in it. So we're not going to go overly negative either, just like we weren't overly positive. It's the first preseason game. I like the fact that they were mixing up the running game, but we saw some hope for the running game. It wasn't great, but I think they really need to get the left tackle situation. I liked what I saw for the most part from the interior guys. Now, I thought the interior held up pretty good. And even right tackle wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. To me, it's just the left tackles, and they need to get that sorted out sooner rather than later. Now they're going to join practice against a really good team in the Eagles. Now the Eagles defense kind of wilted last year, and they got old before our eyes. but we'll see what they look like in joint practices, because I think this will be a much better barometer coming up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Where do you want to go as we kind of wrap up? Anything else
Well,
we need to touch on?
the kickoff, real quick, the new kickoffs.
Was that weird? I mean, I get what they're trying to do, and I obviously know it's not going to change. It doesn't matter what I think, but that was freaking kind of weird. Like
It is, because
it is weird.
I still haven't wrapped my head around it with both teams on one side of the field, only 10 yards apart. And again, it's game one of the preseason, so nobody's showing you anything. It's just, hey, we're going to kick the ball off, and we're going to go down and try to tackle you, and the other team receives it. It's like, we're just running it back. I mean, we're not going to show you anything that we want to do either. But it's just, I haven't seen enough of it to give an opinion one way or the other. It's still really new, but it is strange, and trying to get used to it, watching it on TV. And, I watched it in the UFL, and I can't wrap my head around it yet.
Yeah, it's weird.
But I did like what I saw from the Patriots punt return unit.
Mm-hmm.
They had 2 very good punt returns last night, and that's something that, hey, and this guy popped out of nowhere. I mean, they were making fun of his college last night, from Virginia, but I thought he showed himself.
He didn't. He didn't hurt himself.
He did not. In the last couple of days of camp before this game, I heard his name mentioned quite a bit, that, he was flashing in practice. Then he did it in the game. 2 good punt returns, and that will get you on the roster. So we'll have to see where he goes.
And we'll get on a roster or a practice squad, 100%. There's no doubt about it. It's always funny because I think about the NFL offseason is so much similar to a poker game or a chess match, just depending on how you look at it. And I thought the new special teams rule was kind of interesting because it's like a weird tightrope balance for the coaches trying to decide if, yes, they want to practice the new rules, but they also don't want to show their hand too much because put it this way, we know the NFL is a copycat league. So we know that there's obviously going to be some kind of formation or scheme or whatever on the special teams that there's going to be people that use certain players, insert in certain plays, for the returns. Well, they don't want to show their hand too early. So they can't do it necessarily in preseason, but they need to practice it at the same time. So it's a really fascinating kind of situation. I don't know. It's just gonna be weird to see. So it'll be fun. I don't know. I mean, it was great to see them on the screen this week. It was great to see them back in the pads. Really interested to see what they do during training camp this week. In full disclosure, we were supposed to have Taylor Kyles on. We're hoping to get him back for an independent interview, which we would post either tomorrow or Sunday. And so we'll try to get him on. Friend of the show who's busy with the JuJu news and had some other stuff going on, so we couldn't get him back, but we will get him on soon. So we'll do that. And Steve, the game's on Thursday next week. So we'll plan on doing another show next Friday, talk about the game, kind of recapping that, and recapping a full week of practice. It should be exciting. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing, the highlights and the editorials of everybody, being there. I think that iron sharpens iron. It's always important. I think these practices, as you and I have seen, some of the most productive days, some of the days that the coaching staff loves the most are these kind of practices, because not only do the players get reps off of each other, which can be important, especially when it gets warmer, because you
Yeah.
get annoyed with hitting the same friggin' person day after day. And we've seen a lot of fights break out because of that. But I think it's also important for the coaching too, because even as something as simple, and it sounds stupid, but it's not, even as something as simple as like the receiver coaches from two different teams talking to each other and having conversations while these guys are going through reps is important, because they can feed off each other. And, it's really, really interesting to kind of watch.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I remember when the Eagles came for joint practices a few years ago. I mean, I remember right off the bat, that was the year Malcolm Butler, was an undrafted rookie. And, we're going back there a little bit, but I remember the Eagles coach at the time, I believe it was Chip Kelly. Him and Bill were having a talk right near where we were sitting on the hill. And, I could hear them mentioning Malcolm Butler. And then the very first play, they put Malcolm Butler out with the starters, and he intercepted Nick Foles.
Yep.
And I remember Chip Kelly looked at Bill, and they were right near where we were standing or sitting. And Chip Kelly started smiling, and I could hear him say, "Keep him, Bill. He can play."
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again to anybody that's listening. If you're in the area, I think there's only one or two other practices open to the public. There's not many left. But if you can get out there, go. I mean, it's such a good time.
Oh yeah, I remember that day that the Eagles were here. There were so many people because Philly isn't very far drive from Boston, so a ton of Eagles fans showed up, a ton of Patriots fans. They had the concourses to the stadium open, and they were jam packed with fans.
Oh yeah,
and it was such a great atmosphere for a joint practice, and I thought everyone had a great time there. And I encourage everyone, if they can make it out there.
Yeah, I've been to a ton of great games, and obviously, everyone who's listening to this, has seen a lot of great games. We've been very fortunate as fans to have such a successful franchise. But there's no doubt some of my favorite moments as a pure fan, separating myself from. I'm always the fan, but like when you and I do this, I try to do it as analytically as I can. Like I try to kind of step away from that so I can, do that. It's the same way that we both did when we were writing and when we were covering the team and whatever. But some of my favorite moments as a pure fan were with you and Russ in the stands at training camp. Honestly, going to see. Even like Dante Hightower speaking, at One Night Gillette, or the 3 Games to Glory premieres where we talked to Kevin McCourty, or sitting on the stands and talking with, Mike Reese, who I want to give a shout out to again. I was telling Sarah this last night. I thought it was really cool. Mike's posted a couple of videos lately at training camp with like younger like bloggers and guys like that, like Carlos Los Patriots. Like he's a really like cool young dude, and like Mike's posting videos with them, like taking videos with them, and then doing all that whole thing. And honestly, like one of my favorite moments of all time, because I just respect him so much, was Mike sitting down next to me. I'm on the hill, so like if anyone's been there, you have like the main stands, and then it kind of L's around. And then there's like the quote unquote VIP section, which you, Russ and Steve, you Russ and I always used to sit in. And then there's like the friends and family like tents. And like one of my favorite things of all time was Mike sitting down next to me. I was on the hill, and Mike sits down next to me and goes, "So what were your major takeaways from camp?" And I'll never forget just feeling like. Just being like, man, this guy didn't have to do this. He's one of the best beat reporters in the entire country, but he'll still take the time to do that, because if you know Mike, that is the guy that Mike is. I mean, he is just that pure, that genuine, and honestly, just one of the sweetest human beings I've ever come across. Like literally,
generally one of the nicest people.
Yeah, just a sweet human being, like just incredible. I mean, I can never imagine saying anything more than more than that
Well,
about someone. Like, he's just awesome.
You,
So
you've heard me say this numerous times. The
Yeah.
very first time back in whatever year, I think it was 2014, that I got media access.
It was
The two guy-
2014
yeah,
because I was coming in and out with you there, but you were going inside to like the conferences and the locker room and
yeah.
everything.
And one of the very first times that I got media access, I was feeling very uncomfortable because, beginning of training camp, Bill's going to speak first, and it was in the old media room that was up high, in the stadium, and you're nervous because you don't want to do the wrong thing, and so I'm sitting there, and then Mike Reese and and Phil Yates pulled me aside. They were like, because Mike saw me, he's like, Steve, how's it going? And then the first thing he asked, Derek and Russ here. So, he knew who we were because we would always correspond with them and interact with them. But they made me feel so comfortable. And I'll never forget that because, then we sat outside, watched the practice. Mike did the same thing. So what's your big takeaway for today? And I don't remember what it was at the time, but you just feel like, he just elevated you in your
It's
own mind.
funny too. It's funny too. As long as we're on the topic of, giving give Mike a standing ovation for being just a great person. What's amazing about that too is not only is it him being nice, it's actually a really smart thing for a journalist or a sports writer to do, because, as you know, just picture just one team on a training camp field. Think about all the coaches, all the training staff, and then you have 90 guys running around. If you've never been there before, it is chaotic. You add joint practices on there, and it's a nut house. Like, you don't know where to look, and you're gonna miss something. So there have been a lot of times where you and I have sat side by side, and I hope we have one down in the future at some point where we sit side by side, and I see one thing and you see another, and we didn't get to see the other thing, but we had to describe it to each other because there's a lot of things going on. I mean, how many times did we have, we're sitting in our normal spot and we had, 7-on-7s going or 11-on-11s. We had Dante's Inferno in the back left. We had special teams going to the side, guys kicking field goals or punts. Like, we had shit going on. and it definitely is hard to go ahead and, kind of take all that in. So it's kind of interesting, and it was always cool. But anyway, I wanted to give Mike his flowers a little bit because I thought that some of the videos he's put out, it was cool, and it was reminiscent of how kind he was to me when I was up and coming, and how kind he is to really just anyone in general. So plus I want to give him a shout out for just a terrific 98.5 take.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the best Falcon Matt.
Yeah, and I think he's the benchmark, when it comes to Boston sports media. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that covers the teams that's better than him. I mean,
no, I forget their names, but I mean, there's the guy for the Packers that's pretty good. The guy for the Titans is good. Obviously, John McNair was awesome when he was working for the Houston Chronicle.
I used to read his column just because he's so good. Not that I was really interested in
the Texans, but
the Texans,
he was so funny and sarcastic, but also incredibly informative. Like, he just, man, he is. But I mean, to me, the best two beat writers in the entire Patriots beat. We're lucky to have a lot of good guys. Okay, but my two favorites are Mike Reese and Terry Gregan. I think they're just the two top of the mark. And then we have I have, there's a lot of favorites of radio and beat writers that I just love. I mean, a lot of them we've had on the show over the summer. I mean, no disrespect to them. I mean, we're talking about two of the best in the entire business in the entire country of all 32 teams.
Right.
So,
and, and going back to the joint practices, a lot of times when we were all sitting together, you talk about how much is going on the field, and, we'd compare notes because you might be looking at the running backs or the receivers doing one thing, and I was watching the linebackers do something else, and Russ was watching something else. And then after the play was over, we'd all kind of, hey, what do you see? That type of thing.
You're like, oh, Christian Barmore just beat, Nick Leverett for an inside, and it's a nice inside pass rush move, or hey, Brandon Schooler that was an awesome play, in that special teams drill over here. Or Joey Sly just shanked one off the toe, or whatever it is.
Speaking of that, I remember one day something happened. You guys weren't able to go. It was just one day. And I was sitting on the hill, and I happened to be right near the goalpost, and they were practicing their field goals and extra points or whatever. And Goskowski kicked one, and it went way up the hill because usually the kids were down near the bottom.
Yeah, they're down by the bottom, and they're catching the passes and
stuff,
they
catch
awesome,
the
which is always fun,
Yeah. And he booted one way up the hill, and I was sitting there, and I caught it. And I remember I was sitting right next to what's his name? The former linebacker who on Nesson now. Good friend of ours too.
Ted Johnson?
No. Special teams guy. Oh my God.
You're killing me right now. This is a terrible podcast segment.
Yes.
Linebacker. God. How far are we talking back? What? Give me
the
a
first
year.
two Super Bowls.
Matt
Chatham. Oh my
Matt
God.
Chatham.
I can't believe I forgot that.
only someone that we both talk to a
lot. And I talk to him all the time online about cooking too. So
I'm going to tweet him right now and tell him that you just forgot his name. I'd be like, hey, Steve.
But anyway, I was sitting next to Matt, and I catch the ball. And I was going to give it to one of the kids to throw back, but I stood up, and Matt goes, "Don't do it," because I was going to throw the ball back because there was a reason why I never played quarterback. Yeah. But out of the blue, the gods blessed me, tapped me on the head, and I threw a perfect spiral back toward David Andrews, and he looked up on the hill, gave me the thumbs up.
Like, all right. You're like, all right,
yeah,
I can play.
Hey, that's a nice throw there, bud.
Oh
and
God,
I sat down, and Matt goes, if you threw a wounded duck, you would never live that down. And I said, I thought of that as soon as I was kicking my arm back, and Matt goes, don't do it.
I remember sitting. All right, we'll wrap it up after this because I'm not sure anybody cares about some of our old glory days stories.
Because I was like, oh Jesus, I'm gonna look like an idiot.
I'm sitting, and I think you were either a little far away from me for some reason. I'm not sure why, but Russ was next to me to my left, and I remember seeing a really good defensive play, and I said out loud, I was like, wow, that was a great corner blitz. I was like, they did a really good job of picking that up though. And Andre Tippett, who I didn't know, I know who he is. I just didn't know he was like right behind me on like my back right shoulder. And he goes, that was really perceptive of you. And I was like, thanks. I was like, yeah, I was like, I watch a lot of football. He's like, I can tell. He's like, what do you think about the defensive line? So we started talking about the front seven for like 5 minutes. It was so freaking cool. Like I remember, in like the friends and family area, there used to be like Willie McGinnis or Teddy Bruschi walking around. I remember walking by Teddy B, and I yelled at him. I was like, hey, bear down, because we went to the same college, University of Arizona. And he just looked at me and gave me like a little salute. Even if something as funny as like Giselle like playing with like the kids, like 10. I remember being like 20 feet away and be like, this is like the biggest supermodel of all time. Like this is Tom Brady and Giselle Bundchen's kids just like running right next to me. I'm like, what is going on right now? This is nuts.
She plays with her kids.
It was just a weird. It was just a weird time. It was a fun time to cover the team. I'm glad we really were blessed to have an incredible period to be there in person for all those things. There was just a lot going on, so it was cool. Anything you want to leave the show with, or should we wrap it up?
Yeah, let's put a bow on this one. We'll hopefully be back tomorrow, and we'll talk to Taylor and see what his impressions were of the team. I'm anxious to hear that. And I definitely want to pick his brain on the JuJu thing. I don't think anyone thought that was a surprise, though.
No, I don't think it was a surprise. I just would say that I guess the timing for me is a little surprising, but that's more just because I thought it would have happened earlier. I don't know if it's a numbers thing or whatever, but like to me, it's like I just don't look at it as something that I was expecting in August. I thought that would have been like a June or July thing, but I mean, it is what it is. We're only 9 days into August. So looking forward to hopefully having another show with Taylor on. I'm hoping we're both hoping that it's going to happen tomorrow, but I mean, there's a lot going on for him right now. So we're hoping that he gives us a little bit of time there. We'll release that as a standalone episode. Otherwise, Steve and I will be back a week from now, next Friday, to talk about the joint practices and the preseason game for the Eagles. So that'll be exciting. I hope everybody who's listening has a fun weekend, safe weekend. Please, again, subscribe to us on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. Keep us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. I want to thank Steve Balestrieri, myself, Derek Havens, Russ Goldman, and Ian Logue from PatsFans.com. We thank you all for listening to this episode of Patriots 4th and 2. We will see you guys very soon.